How many of you know what WIOA is? How many of you know what Section 511 is? How many of you work with students with developmental disabilities, ID students? Only a handful of you? How many people have students with intellectual disabilities that are in your district at the high school level? Okay, this is for you. All right, typically, the Workforce Investment Act, which was reauthorized in 2014 as the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, did not impact schools. It was all employment and training funds. However, when they reauthorized it, two emphases were placed on that impact us. One is youth and transition. The other is students with disabilities, or individuals with disabilities that include students with disabilities. So I have like 6 slides, most of which you've already seen. So I'm just going to kind of summarize them because you need to be aware of this. I don't have details, but it's coming down the pike. I will talk a little bit more about it this afternoon. And if you go onto the website, there's an additional PowerPoint that will provide a little bit more information. So there's 2 sections in WIOA that relate to us in education. Level Up Services, which is the pre-employment transition services, which I'll go over this afternoon. I'm not covering that today. The new piece that you need to know about is Section 511, which looks at sub-minimum wage. They want, well, let's not get ahead of myself. The purpose of this legislation is to ensure that students with disabilities, especially youth, have a meaningful opportunity to prepare for, obtain, maintain, advance in, or regain competitive integrated employment, including supported or customized employment. Many of you may have heard about the case that was in Rhode Island where they had a lot of their students going into sheltered workshops and they were told they can't do that anymore. Fortunately, although we have some sheltered workshops in Connecticut, we have not been putting students in them for a long time. They are just adults for the most part. So that's not our major issue. But we do have organizations that have what we call a 14C certificate, which is issued by the Department of Labor, which allows them to pay students with disabilities sub-minimum wage. Those are being phased out, not eliminated, because there are some students who just can't work in a competitive setting, but we are having to do a lot of documentation to prove that that's the case. So the intent is to limit the use of sub-minimum wage, focus on these organizations that have 14C certificates. There is a list of them on the U.S. Department of Labor's website. And there is an emphasis on students with disabilities who are known to be seeking sub-minimum wage employment after high school. This is where you come in. You will have to be working with Department of Developmental Services who will help you to identify those students who are working with them that are planning to go into group-supported employment, which is sub-minimum wage employment. If you know that's where those students are heading, there's a whole bunch of documentation that we as school districts have to provide. We have to provide it to the Department of Rehabilitation Services, DOORS, which is either BRS or BESB. It lists very specifically what we have to provide, and unfortunately we're hoping it could be in the IEP, but it's not in the IEP, so we have to come up with a new form. It will be a very short form, but a new form nonetheless. The other thing you have to do with your ID students is they have to be referred to BRS before they exit high school, so within the last year, at least. They have to go through an evaluation with BRS to determine if they're competitively employable, and that has to be documented. Then those students, once they exit, if it's proven that they aren't competitively employable, they can go into a sub-minimum wage situation, but then they have to be provided with counseling, resources, and be reevaluated at least every year to see if now they're ready for competitive employment. So, I think I said all of this. All right, so the two things predominantly is we have to document that we provided transition services. What that will look like will be coming down the pike. It hasn't been determined yet. We have to coordinate with DDS and BRS to make sure they're referred through Level Up Services to get evaluated. Some of the things that you may have to be aware of is if the student has to be transported off-site to do this evaluation, BRS cannot pay for transportation. They may not be able to pay for a job coach if that's what the student needs. So there may be some impact on us to provide those services. It will have to be done during the day, so it may impact the student's schedule and activities for a particular day. All of those details have yet to be worked out. So we are putting out a document that is at the moment going to be going through the commissioners. It's an interagency agreement on Section 511 and what every organization and agency is required to do. As soon as that's available, we will share it with you. We are also putting together an interagency work group to work out things like the form, what transition services are documented, when do they have to be documented, when the student enters transition in 9th grade or the year that they're exiting. All of those are questions that are not spelled out in the regulations. So if there's anyone who is interested, particularly if you have a large population of ID students who's interested in being on that work group, we really need your input. It is not our intent to hand you a bunch of procedures and say, here, you have to implement this without your input. So send me an email. Don't tell me today, I'll forget. Send me an email if you're interested in being on this work group. The other section of Section 511 that you have to be aware of is you as an agency or we as a State Department, we cannot enter into a contract with an entity that holds a 14C certificate for the purpose of paying a youth a sub-minimum wage. So if you're contracting with one of these 14C organizations, and I'm just going to throw out an example, like Easter Seals, the Harks, Kennedy Center, those are some 14C organizations. If you're contracting with them and you're not paying the student a sub-minimum wage in that contract, that's fine. But you cannot contract with them to have the student be paid a sub-minimum wage if they hold a 14C certificate. So the only thing I can say is, if you have questions, email me or call me or come to the session this afternoon. It's something I know most of you have not heard about, and it is coming down the pike. DDS will be coming to your schools, BRS will be contacting you, so I wanted to make sure you were aware of these two new requirements under WIOA.